Okay, so this is going there, and refresh this page, and this should pop up. And we are rolling. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is just a random live stream. No particular plans, just completely random. So, why not? Um, why not read a little bit from Gracie Allen, Gracie, a love story by George Burns. Or George Burns, as he would say. His name. Anyway. Chapter 1. For 40 years, my act consisted of one joke, and then she died. Anyway. Sorry, repeating this. Chapter 1. For 40 years, my act consisted of one joke, and then she died. Her real name was Gracie Ethel Cecily Rosalind Allen. Gracie Allen. But for those 40 years, audiences in the small time and big time vaudeville houses and movie theaters and at home listenings or their radios or watching television knew her and loved her simply as Gracie. Just Gracie. She was on a first name basis with America. Lovable, confused Gracie, whose uncle Barnum Allen had the water drained from his swimming pool before diving 100 feet into it because he knew how to dive, but didn't just know how to swim. Hey, Charles, how are you? And who claimed to have grown grapefruits that were so big it took 8 of them to make a dozen. Gracie, who confused to cheating on her driver's test by copying the car in front of her, who decided that horses must be deaf because she saw few of them at concerts, who admired making ice cubes with hot water so she would be prepared in case the water heater broke, and who realized it was much better for a quiz show contestant to know the questions beforehand rather than the answers because, quote, the people who know the answers come and go, but the man who asks questions comes back every week, unquote. Just Gracie, who started with absolute certainty, quote, I've got so many brains I haven't used some of them yet, unquote. There was only one Gracie. And there was only one half of her. That Gracie was real character. But there was a lot more to Gracie than the funny little girl whose mind was made up of mostly by me and our writers. Gracie was a beautiful, elegant lady with a real style and class. But you never saw Gracie looking anything but perfect. And she was charming, and she was very smart. Smart enough to become the dumbest woman in show business history. Gracie was a great actress. I don't think she ever received enough credit for that. She wasn't performing. She was like nothing like the dizzy character she played. Nothing at all. Well, except for maybe the time she backed up into a parked car, managed to convince the driver that the car that he hit her. Or the time she inaugurated the Chicago Exposition by swinging a bottle of champagne at the cornerstone of the building. Instead, she threw it. She threw a paint glass store. She never quite understood gambling either. When she gambled, she always kept her winnings in a separate pile from her stakes, so she could spend $50 to win $20. When I asked her how she was doing, she'd tell me, "Great, I'm winning $20. I never thought about it, but maybe the character was the real Gracie, and she was just playing the role of the elegant lady. Like I said, Gracie was a great actress." See, that's what I like about this so far, is that George Burns is, instead of just talking about Gracie near the end, he's making us, the readers, feel that she's still alive, that she's still in the room. By making her, yeah, maybe a bit dumbed down, but that was her character. She often put herself in that position. Just like Lucille Ball, very smart woman, but she played a dumb housewife. She like one of my favorite episodes of I Love Lucy is where Lucy Ricardo, Lucille Ball, and her friend Ethel, Vivian Vance, make bread, but instead of using the proper amount of yeast, they use like 2 pounds full. So every other ingredient prior to the yeast was correct, but the yeast was so out of proportion that when they opened the oven, this huge piece of bread came out. This huge loaf of bread came out that was so large. I mean, it had to been fake, but it was so large that I think if you would have laid it out in their apartment, it would have, or at least a studio apartment at that, the actual studio apartment where they shot the show, it would have been, I think, the whole set. That's how large the bread was. But I'm not prefacing this episode the right way. The bet was that Lucy, Ethel, Fred, and Ricky could live life for a week like it was in the 1800s. And didn't pan out. Didn't pan out whatsoever. Far from it. Ricky cut himself while using a straight razor, multiple nicks. Fred grew his beard out because he was afraid to shave with a straight razor. What else? Lucy and Ethel had challenges as well. Lucy and Ethel couldn't use the washing machine, so they actually had to wash the clothes in the apartment and then dry them outside, which a lot of people still did in the 1950s, but a lot of people at the time were using washing machines, which were relatively new. But other than that, like, the episode's such a classic. I would highly suggest checking it out if you haven't seen it yet. Anyway, getting a little sidetracked. Back to the story. I would have known. We were together day and night for 40 years, and she never stopped amazing me. She was just a tiny little thing, barely 5 feet tall, and never more than 100 pounds. But she was capable of so much. Gracie was just as comfortable discussing fancy dresses with the top designers of the world, dining with Al Capone at his place in Chicago, and playing jacks on the kitchen table with the kids as she was serving the first mistress of ceremonies at the Palace Theater on Broadway, during which she asked the audience, quote, "If I say the right thing, please forgive me," unquote, launching National Donut Week by pushing a button on the Start donut making machines. This I never knew. By Start donut making machines across the country, dancing on a screen with Fred Astaire, or running for president of the United States on the surprise party ticket. Okay, so I guess every time National Donut Day or National Donut Week comes about, we have Gracie Allen to thank for that. That's very interesting. But could you actually imagine Gracie Allen as president of the United States? That would be something. That would genuinely be an event. I could imagine it going like this. George Burns is her VP in this situation. And forgive me for the bad Gracie Allen impersonation, but I could do a pretty good George Burns impersonation. So Gracie, now you're the president of the United States. And tell me, what would you do for your first week as president of the United States? Well, George, like I said, forgive me for the bad Gracie Allen impersonation. Well, George, I would rather start a comic book convention. Gracie, comic books aren't read by adults. That's not true. They're read by Dean Martin every week. Now, Gracie, Dean Martin's an Italian man. I'm not sure if he, as a grown man, would be reading comic books still. Jerry Lewis tells me that all the time. Well, Gracie, I'm talking about on the national stage. What would your policy be otherwise? Like what would your what would your policy be on jobs, for example? George, I really do think my policy on jobs would be more jobs. Gracie, no. I mean, yes to the jobs, but how would you come about it? How would you come about the jobs? Like, would you open more mom and pop stores? Would you start chain stores? Would you expand the McDonald's here in California? I mean, what would you do? George, that's going to happen by Ray Kroc pretty soon. Well, I have words I want to say about Ray Kroc, but we're on television right now in the White House, and I can't necessarily say what I want to, if that makes any sense. I could just imagine that. Um, anyway, I'll read a couple more from this chapter. That's it. Then I'll move on to something else. Gracie was my partner in our act, my best friend, my wife and lover, and the mother of our two children. We were a team, both and on and off the stage. Our relationship was simple. I fed her the straight lines and she fed me. She made me famous as the only man in America who could get a laugh by complaining. My wife understands me. What a good marriage. We knew it was a good marriage because we never read anything bad about it in the papers. They never wrote about us in the big gossip magazine Confidential. They wrote a story that said we had a big fight, and then I'd move into the west wing of her house. I knew that couldn't be true. Our house didn't have a west wing. Play on the running for president. What, George Burns was, what, in his 90s when this was written? Still had his wit. Still had his wit. This book is about Gracie and our life together. It is the story of a marriage without scandals, separations, bitter accusations, or Hollywood gossip. But I'm going to write about it anyway. Those of you who have seen me perform know I smoke a cigar and use it as a prop. When I tell a joke, I pause and puff on my cigar. That way, when I take a puff of my cigar, the audience knows I've told a joke. It works very well. But since you can't see me smoking a cigar while reading this book, you'll just have to believe me when I tell you something is funny. This book is funny. The other thing is, it's important you know about me that I lie a lot. That's the truth. But usually when I tell a lie, I'll admit it. I'm a very honest liar. When I talk about Gracie, I don't lie. I don't have to. The truth is unbelievable enough. I'm not puffing on my cigar. I never knew how old Gracie was. I never asked. When the newspaper reported that she'd been born in 1906 and that she was only 58 years old when she died in 1964, maybe she was. When I met her in 1923, she could sing and she could dance and she was willing to work cheap. Who cared how old she was? I know she was born in San Francisco just after the turn of the century. So that, hold on, the turn of the century, George Burns' time, that would have been 1920 something. So she had been born, no, she was older than George when she died. She was 69 years old in 64. So counting back, maybe late 1900s, close to the 1910s. Because if she was 69 when she died, that means George Burns was 67. So, no, my math is off. Hold on a second. Let me do this math right. It's almost comical to watch me do math without a calculator. But I'm going to try to attempt to do mental math. It's sad when you make yourself laugh. Anyway, what? So George Burns was born 19. No, he died in 1996 at 100. He was born in 1896. So if she was 69 when she died, and he was only 67, then she would have had been born the 1880s or early 1890s. I think that's right. Anyway, forget the mental math. She often said that her birth certificate had been destroyed in the Great Earthquake in 1906. Okay, so my estimate wasn't that off. Where was I? Gracie always thought that it was very funny. All the glamour girls in Hollywood lied about their age and claimed that their birth certificates had been destroyed. She was a comedian, and hers actually had been destroyed. Yeah. I actually have a book that talks about the earthquake of the Great Fire, actually, of 1906. An earthquake of California. It's in one of my old encyclopedia books. But the damage it did, I think the total deaths were like 723 people died with rubble fell on them. Over 300 people were injured. The Great Fire of the 1800s of California and Chicago at that killed a lot of people, destroyed a lot of buildings. It's interesting how Mother Nature shows us that she loves us. She sends us earthquakes and fires, and then we need man-made power to put it out. So is Mother Nature really a loving mother, or is she just a very pissed off babysitter? I don't know. Questions that you think about life. Anyway, I once asked her about those newspaper stories, and then they said that she was born after the quake. If that's true, I said, how could your birth certificate have been destroyed? Well, she explained, that was a terribly powerful earthquake. True. Very much was. I think it was, at the time, a 6.4 on the Richter scale, which is a very strong earthquake. It's not terribly strong in the sense that it I think the strongest earthquake on the Richter scale is like a 10 point something. But a 6.4 on the Richter scale is like in the higher range. Or maybe she didn't say that. I told you, I lie a lot. Gracie never claimed responsibility for the quake. In fact, some people wondered if the opposite was true. The only thing that Gracie ever said about her birth was that I was so surprised at being born that I didn't speak for a year and a half. Her father, George Allen, was a well-known song and dance man, an Irish clog, and minstrel dancer who worked up and down the West Coast. But after having 5 kids, he did a disappearing act. Ooh. Ooh. Ouch. Either. Oh. Now I'm puffing my cigar. See how that works? Whew. Oh, Christ. Either he died or he left the family. Hoping he didn't leave the family. Hoping he didn't leave the family. Best case scenario, he died. When you mentioned the disappearing act, George. Uh, anyway, that's enough for this book for now. That's just a little bit of it. I want to do a review of 2 CDs actually that I rented from my local library. Now, I'm not sure if people who are watching this now or watching it later, the channel itself, are fans of Italian music or opera at that. But one of my favorite singers still alive today and working is Andrea Bocelli. If you don't know who Andrea Bocelli is, he's a Italian tenor who got his start in the 1990s. And how he got his start is very interesting. It's in the latest movie made about him. It's on Netflix. And so Pavarotti was going to do a special in Tuscany, which is part of the mountain region of Italy. And problem happened. Pavarotti, they're so good, I combined them both. Pavarotti had to do an opera, so he couldn't do his special. So he wanted to basically interview people who were able to do it, or at least were talented enough to do it. So Andrea Bocelli was one of the people that showed up. Out of, I think, it's not disclosed in the movie, but I think he said in an interview it was like over 100 people, 100 Italian men who showed up who thought they would be good for the job. And a lot of them are great opera singers who didn't have work at the time. But when Bocelli sang a song, one of Pavarotti's hits, La Donna Mobile, it was the audition piece, mandatory audition piece, that the people had to learn. He was so good to Pavarotti that Pavarotti, after listening to all the guys sing, they went home. As soon as Bocelli got to the train station in Tuscany to go back to where he and his first wife lived, Veronica, I believe her name was, he got a call at the train station. And the call was from Pavarotti's agent. And he told Bocelli, "You got the gig. You get Pavarotti's spot in Tuscany." And so this was the biggest news for him because Bocelli, he came from a very musical family. Music was a huge thing in his family, and his family are and were and still are big Pavarotti fans. Those of his family that are still alive, his immediate family at that. And so right away he called his family saying, "I'm going to be on TV in Tuscany replacing Pavarotti." He held the secret till he got home. He told his family, "Don't call his wife. He'll tell. He'll tell her." So she was kept in the dark for maybe 3 hours, because from Tuscany to where they lived in Italy at the time, him and his first wife, that was about a 3-hour trip. And so when he got home, he told his wife, "The master said I'm so good that he doesn't even need to be there." Knowing that Pavarotti knew in advance he wasn't going to be there because he had an opera to attend, to be a part of, like last minute choice. But it was then that he was told, "You're going to, be replacing Pavarotti at Tuscany." So it went from originally being Pavarotti live in Tuscany to now Andrea Bocelli live in Tuscany. And this was his first ever live special on television in Italy. And it was going to be a worldwide event. All TVs were going to have it across the globe. It was so popular that he got a record contract, a record deal right afterwards. And he was asked to do an album. And this is the first album he did, Romanza. Now, there was a song written for him. That's the first track, and it's the most popular song of his. If you ask any Bocelli fan, myself included, it's Cante Patero, which translated from Italian to English means time to say goodbye. And it's a beautiful song. It really is. And it came out in 1996. 1996. And it was so popular, this album. It was such an international phenomenon that he still has a career today. And he, in 2016, did a 20th anniversary special recording single of Cante Patero, remastered. It's wonderful. It really is wonderful. It's on YouTube. It's on his Vimeo page, or Vevo page, however you say it. And the other Andrea Bocelli album I want to review is another great classic. This came out, looking at the date on the CD, 2013. So this came out at the third year into this decade. That's going to end this year. Think about that. Wow. If you think about it, we're already halfway through 2019, the last year of this decade. It was only 9 years ago, soon to be 10 years ago, that was 2010. Funny how time slips away, to quote Willie Nelson. Anyway, he did another, it was a recorded special to DVD in Portofino. And special is ideally called I found my love in Portofino. Anyway, some of the songs on this CD/DVD include Qualche Stupido Ti Amo, which translated to from Italian to English is something stupid, which was originally done in the 1960s by Frank Sinatra and his daughter Nancy Sinatra. It also includes Quesas, 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 which the original Spanish recording was in the movie Brokeback Mountain. Track 9 is Roma non fa la stupida stasera. Beautiful song. And final track is Love Me Tender. It's his version of Love Me Tender, originally done by Elvis Presley in Blue Hawaii in the 1960s. But yeah, Love in Portofino, also a great Pacelli album. And one of my favorite Pacelli songs comes from a kind of his Sacred Arias album. He did 2 Sacred Arias albums because the one in the early 2000s was so popular. It was kind of considered his Christmas album. And then he was asked again in 2003 or 2004 to do a second Sacred Arias album. And this song that I'm about to give you a brief solo about, translated from Italian, literally means my lovely Poppy. And I'll be doing it on a baritone key, just fair warning, because I can't sing that high without warming up my voice on the tenor scale. And even when I warm my voice on the tenor scale too much, it sounds like I'm trying too hard. Self-deprecating humor. You gotta have that about yourself. You gotta know where your limitations are. Anyway. Amapola, lindissima amapola, sarà sempre mia, ma tua sola. Yo te quiero, Madalina mia, de qua che ama la flor, la luz del dia. Amapola, lindissima amapola. And then I'm kind of forgetting the lyrics after that. Anyway, that's a bit of the snippet of the song. And it's a very beautiful song. It's a short one, but it's a lovely song at that. But I'll tell you how I became a Pacelli fan. I was in the hospital. This is a good story where you say I was in the hospital. A lot of the times when you hear I was in the hospital, it could be some person giving a little bit too much information, like I was in the hospital because my foot infection was so bad that they had to treat it there and stuff like that. No, but I was in the hospital because I had a flare up on Thanksgiving Day in 2015. And for those of you who don't know already, it's on my YouTube page. It's from years ago, I think from when maybe a little after I first started. Had to be from like 2013, but years ago. Um, in 2012, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease is not life threatening, but it's a bitch to live with. Pardon my French. When it's under control like it is now, it doesn't even cross my mind that I have it. But when it does cross my mind, uh, it's normally when I have a short flare up and I need a heating pad for it. But to give you an idea what a Crohn's flare up feels like, think of somebody making a animal balloon and twisting it until it pops. Now imagine that animal balloon being your intestines. Imagine that being your intestines and that feeling of twisting and twisting and twisting. Yeah, it's uh not fun to live with. And so Thanksgiving Day of 2015, it started out normally. I was having stuffing, uh, almost like almost something like fudge squares, but stuffing squares. I was having that along with celery. I shouldn't have really had celery because that's high in fiber, but it was celery with peanut butter. It's a Thanksgiving tradition. I like to have it that way because I hate sour cream. I can't stand it. Anyway, it was around Thanksgiving dinner where around the time we were about to eat, where I'm like, I'll eat a little later. I just gotta lay down on the couch right now. So I lay down on the couch and I something was about to come up, let's just say that. And I knew a heating pad wouldn't help. So I was admitted to the hospital on Thanksgiving Day in 2015. Anyway, while I was in the hospital, I was flipping through the channels, and when you're in the hospital, there is a 50% chance you'll either find something worth watching in the hospital, or 50% chance you'll find something that's not worth watching altogether, but you'll watch it regardless because there's no other option. You know how hospitals TV are. They don't give you options like you have at home. They have pretty much standard cable. But anyway, I was stumbling across PBS. Now, prior to 2015, I would never consider myself a man who liked PBS because PBS to me prior to 2015 was like the old person station. Sorry for the assumption, but they would play like the Lawrence Welk show on there and Pennsylvania Polka episodes from like 1983, and they would play like very little kid shows in the morning. So there was really no fair medium for like teenagers and young adults. That's what I thought PBS was until 2015, where it was great performances. I'm like, okay, I'm into theater. I like theater. I like Broadway. I like stuff like that. It was Andrea Bocelli doing his promotional concert for his album Cinema. And I'm like, okay, odds are he's probably good if he's still around. And from the first song, which was his rendition of Maria from the West Side Story, I was like, okay, this is worth watching. But I really fell in love with his voice when he did A Più di Penso. Now, for those of you who have not seen Once Upon a Time in America, that's where the song is from. A Più di Penso is a orchestrational piece from Once Upon a Time in America, which is a fantastic film, by the way, with Robert De Niro and plenty of other people. It's one of those films that goes forward in time and back in time seamlessly without it feeling forced. But anyway, he sings the song with Ariana Grande. Now, if you ask me, Ariana Grande would be much better if she did more Italian music than the stuff that she's paid to do, which is all this auto-tuned, auto-corrected pop music. Because you listen to A Più di Penso, which is no auto-tune, of Andrea Bocelli and Ariana Grande singing it. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful to listen to. It gives you chills down your spine. You have a beautiful soprano singing with a aging but yet wonderfully sounding Italian tenor. Then you listen to the stuff that's on the air that she sings. It's a day and night difference. It's where, wow, her real potential is when she's singing A Più di Penso. But her shortcomings is what she's paid to sing on the radio. So I would prefer Ariana Grande to sing real music like A Più di Penso. It doesn't even have to be songs in Italian. It could be songs that she wants to sing, but singing it in like that real way without auto-tune. Because she really does have the vocal range to be the next Barbra Streisand, if you ask me. Anyway, but it's like Lady Gaga. I prefer Lady Gaga now compared to before. When she first came out, I'm like, I could tell this woman has potential. I could tell that she has talent. But my only issue is that it's to music which feels, I don't know, too audio mixed, too much techno dance music. But the one thing, though, that I knew about Lady Gaga right away was the fact that she didn't sing with autotune, which I could tell that's how she had a great range for music. But when she started singing with Tony Bennett on his American Duets 2 album, when she sang with him The Lady is a Tramp, which they did a very fun version of. I'm like, that's it. That's Lady Gaga. And I like her music now compared to then, because now she could really be herself. And I think she likes the fact that she could be herself now. If you guys haven't watched the movie A Star is Born, the fourth remake. Yes, fourth remake. Let me give you the history of this film real quick. The first one came out in the 1930s. 1936. It was one of the early talkie films. 20 some odd years later, Judy Garland does her version in the 1950s. I think on the 20th anniversary itself, because it came out in 1956. The streak continues. In the 1970s, almost 20 years later, 1973, so like around 18 years later, no, 17 years later, they do A Star is Born with Chris Christopherson, a country singer, and Barbra Streisand. 40 years later, now doubling the streak, they make A Star is Born with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, which is a phenomenal film. Phenomenal soundtrack. I have it on LP. I could guarantee you, in another 40 years, they're going to make the 5th consecutive remake of A Star is Born. Anyway, that's just my prediction. If you see me playing with this fabric measurement, is because I need something to fidget with. Speaking about fidgeting, I want to talk about something on more of a serious note. It's not too serious, but it's just a little bit on the serious side. I have it linked to my YouTube channel. It's in my YouTube video history. I was diagnosed at a young age with ADHD. I still have it as an adult. Now, some people, they grow out of it. Some people, it's something that affects them as children, and then they don't have it as adults. Well, I'm one of the many. That's not a part of that minority number. I'm part of the majority that it still travels with them as they go and continue into adulthood. Now, for those who don't understand what ADHD is, it's attention deficit. Hold on. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. That's it. But I don't see it as a disorder. I use it to my advantage. See, people with ADHD are more scatterbrained. So we're capable of doing multitask at once, which is good if you do something that requires multitasking. But my issue is, don't get me wrong, medicine is sometimes necessary for people who have ADHD. But it wasn't necessary for me. The first couple of medicines they put me on, it made me like a zombie. So I was still taking my ADHD medicine until, I like to say, the 8th grade, where I stopped taking it willingly and kind of let my brain be at its natural state. And I knew that I had to control my ADHD, or at least harness it in a way that would make sense to me. So, what do I enjoy the most in life? Music. Music is my prime motivator in life. Like how people are motivated by numbers, they're motivated by English, they're motivated by algebra or history, although history is one of my best subjects in school. But music is something that I really know. And so the summer between middle school, after my 8th grade year of middle school, and transitioning to my freshman year of high school, I had to partake in band camp. And it was a entire month-long thing of August in the hot sun, but it was purposeful because we were getting our stats and graphs in order, and music unison in order, and parts in order for our shows, our halftime shows, our first show or second show or pregame show. And I knew that would be a perfect way for me to harness my ADHD. And it did work throughout high school. I never had an issue with fidgeting or having a hard time studying for a test. Although I did find out the best way for me to study for a test was to play cards, solitaire at that. Because if you think about it, solitaire is more than a card game. You could use it to study for something because it actually is almost like you're picking the right answer and separating it from the wrong answer. Anyway, that's how I used to study in high school. So, as an adult who's been graduated from high school since 2012, nearly 10 years, almost 8 years, but 7 years altogether, if you want to be technical. I harness my ADHD through creativity. As an adult, I do theater, community theater at that. I'm not ashamed to do community theater. I like doing community theater because it is, in a way, the closest to vaudeville acting and of vaudeville theater you could ever get to in this day and age. But where was I? Oh yes, with acting, with doing adult choir, with doing the arts essentially is what drives me to do what I do, to harness my ADHD. Now, I also do community theater because in life is about rejection. You're going to be rejected by clubs, groups, and I could guarantee one of these days I'm going to audition for a community theater play and I'm probably not going to be a pick for it, and I'm fine with that. But I'm grateful for the roles I've been doing so far because I really like entertaining people. You know how, excuse me, you know how you get a gut feeling that you're meant to do something in life that that you're meant to do that specific thing? Well, for me, I've always been meant to do the arts. Music, choir, band, more specifically with the music, acting, music still. I'm a very artistic person. And I like entertaining people. I'm meant to be an entertainer. Anyway, that's enough of me rambling on and on and on and on. So, until then, till next time, whenever I feel like doing another random live stream, arrivederci and live long and prosper.